Hello there, YouTube. This is Sibbles and Bits back at it again. It's been a while since I've actually made a video, so decided that today was a good day to get back into that, mainly because I have taken off of work due to, well, more or less mental distress. That's not a call for help. Everything's perfectly fine, but apparently the antidepressants are finally kicking in because I'm feeling all sorts of feelings. And if we're going to take the day off to feel feelings, then we're going to take the day off to talk about feelings. Don't worry, this isn't going to be like some sort of therapy or anything like that. Um, there's basically, for about 2 weeks, I believe, or I think Islands of Insight has been out for like a month now. I've wanted to make a video because at the time it was receiving a lot of flack because of how weird it was, and I wanted to talk over it with some insight about, or not insight, right? But just a discussion about how the games industry works now and how I feel like a lot of people don't get that. So this is mostly an internal monologue. If you're hoping for a review of Islands of Insight, I think it's a great game. But I understand that it's not for everybody. We might get into that if I don't talk for way too long. But basically, about 2 weeks ago, I was sick for a extended period of time, like a total of 2 weeks. And during that time, I needed a game that did not disrupt my vestibular hypofunction. 2024 challenge: create any movie series without mentioning you have brain damage, difficulty impossible. Um, and I also needed a game that if I ran out of energy, which was relatively quickly, I needed to go back to bed because I was just pretty much sleeping the whole time. And Islands of Insight was perfect for that. Islands of Insight is a open world puzzle game. I call it Oops All Puzzles, the not MMO, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But we'll just go ahead and log in here. Um, but yeah, really enjoying my times with Islands of Insight. I think I'm at like 120 hours already. It's one of my most played games this year. Um, and it's not usually the type of game that I play. Hold on a bit. Sorry. I still got a little bit of a respiratory thing going on, so apologies for that. Hopefully we actually get in here. Islands of Insight is... My joke is that it runs like a dream, because it's a game about like dream states and transcendence and stuff like that, epiphany of yourself and all that sort of stuff. And it's also a joke because it crashes all the fucking time, which is probably a little rude. Anyways, let me first just take a look here and figure out what I'm doing for the day before I start talking. Because the reason why I wanted to use this video to talk about my perception of the game industry today is because it's a great game that doesn't take a lot of like processing power, if that makes sense. So it's a good game to just do stuff to. And that is one of the benefits of the game, in my opinion. It's not like most games, where obviously I like playing roguelikes that make me make difficult decisions or calculate and think about things in ways that I normally wouldn't. And I kind of realized recently that I need that. Someone who frequents on the channel and a very good friend of mine, Jabo, and I have been playing the We Were Here series, and it made me realize that I had been neglecting, like, logic and puzzles, like, things that make you think a little bit more abstractly. Whereas I've been mainly dealing with numbers, like specifically with what I do, and both as a job and as a hobby with this channel. And yeah, it was like refreshing because I'll let you in on a secret. Mental elasticity is dope. You should be looking for it. But anyways, I suppose getting back on topic, it's not a game that I would normally play, and I don't think that it's a game that's for everybody. My apologies. And I think that that's very key to get across, right? Is most games that I play on the channel, I'm like, yo, this is something special. I think everybody should get in on this. And that's also, I don't want to necessarily say my role in my current Discord, but kinda, right? Like games like Risk of Rain, Helldivers, all these sorts of games that I'm like, yo, this game's cooking. You guys need to start looking at this. And so then I'll usually stream it on the Discord, and people will be like, you know what? Tiny Rogues does look like this shit. I'm gonna go buy that, and all of a sudden everybody's playing Tiny Rogues. Well, I already knew that this wasn't for everybody, and when I stream it to the Discord, almost everybody's like, okay, that looks kind of neat, but it's definitely not my game. It doesn't look like you're doing anything. And again, that's kind of the point, in my opinion, is sometimes you need a break and you just need to go do things. And maybe it's my ADHD or something like that. But the fact that there's puzzles all over the place, puzzles can be mentioned loosely in this case. It's, again, just refreshing. Like not having to keep a spreadsheet rolling inside my brain like all the time. And wow, this game really does not like me recording. Hello. But you know, not having to run a mental spreadsheet like all the time and process information and do all that. There are certainly like mental puzzles. There's lots of logic grids in here, and I like those a lot. But if you don't feel like thinking, you don't have to think. You can just run around and do things. And I think that that's catering to a specific type of player that may not know that this game exists. So I did want to show it off. But also, right, like sometimes when I do Roguevember, I get some people who are like, oh yeah, this game is definitely not for me. And again, I understand that. Anyways, going more into Islands of Insight and the not MMO. So, you can see on my top right, I have quests, right? Solve certain types of puzzles. Return to the effigy of the ancients to receive your rewards. We'll run over there, but basically what those are is those are dailies. And so we've got daily quests, and every day you get 5 daily quests, and you can go and interact with them and turn them in, and you get a currency. A currency that does basically nothing but allow you to buy cosmetics, which we will take a look at now. Please forgive my knockoff Doctor Strange. It's actually quite weird because in a game where you're not supposed to look normal, I try to look as normal as possible, and it looks even weirder than the people who are like purple skin, green glow, looks like some sort of Aztec warrior or some stuff like that. But basically all this currency here does is unlock these things, right? So then why are you doing dailies to unlock cosmetics? And why have dailies in the first place? Well, it doesn't stop there. Oh, we were going to the Daily Pearl. My bad. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Why are there dailies? And going a little bit more in depth after we hit this jump pad here, as we go up towards the Daily Pearl, where it's telling me that I can turn stuff in, there is even more not MMO content going on. As you can see, there are other players in this game here running around. Molten Cucumber, No Nobody, and the Noah Zone. All these people are running around, and down at the bottom left of my screen when I'm not in the map, you can see that these people are actively completing puzzles, and that it will tell me that they are completing these puzzles. But let me tell you something. I'm sorry, I do not care about Firebird over here on the opposite side of the map completing puzzles. So, why are there people in my game? And why does it want me to know that they're completing puzzles? Again, good question. Back to here. That's not how I get there, that's how I get there. So, each continent has a certain amount of puzzles that exist. 608 perspective puzzles, 678 hidden object puzzles, and it's actually like more than that. This is just the required for the air quotes completion percent, which gets me trail length, which allows me to cause vestibular conditions to other people more easily. But if I hover over this, for instance, the Sightseer puzzle, which is in this region, it says solve today 21 of 21. So today there's 21 of these Sightseer mirrors in this area. And each of these roll on their own daily timers. In about 20 hours, this is going to roll over again. But I already have all the Sightseer mirrors today, so I don't have to do them if I don't want to. But it'll allow me to collect this useless cosmetic currency if I want. And also increase my player level, which goes up to 100, which I'm already almost at. But when this rolls over again, there is a total of 181 Sightseer puzzles in this continent. So you might run into an instance like this where I have all except 4 matchboxes. So if I want to get 100% of them, like I've not leitmotifs, which is one that I've completed. I believe it's this. I've completely completed Phasic Dials. I have what? Oh, and my last morphic fractal for today is actually here today. So I'll want to hunt that down so that I never have to do these sons bitches again on this continent. So again, we've got this whole daily mentality and all that shit. And so why? Why is this game trying to be a not MMO? And I believe, I'm not saying that I have any like huge insight into the how games are made nowadays. I think I have a little bit more than the average person, but I think everybody likes to think that. But as I've sort of been next to game development teams in osmosis by doing lots of beta testing, bug reporting, stuff like that, and reading one that I highly accredit to a lot of my knowledge is actually Path of Exile, because they love to write articles when they fuck up hard. And that has given me so much insight into how like games work and like how they approach like developer interviews. And as they've been doing that, and I've been in osmosis with all these other development teams, I've realized that manufacturing multi-layered printed circuit boards, which is what I oversee. I am a project coordinator for a plant that does that. It's really not that different from the games industry. Like, obviously, it is considerably, probably more different than it is not different, but there's a lot of parallels, and especially when you get down to like brass tacks, like triage of what's more important, why certain things need to get pushed over others, and the sad state of losing contracts, right? Like, all of these things are very familiar as I am standing next to devs and they're like, hey, we're going to have to stop making Arcanium because of the publisher and this stuff and money. And it's like, son of a fucking bitch, right? But anyways, what I mean to say is that in today's gaming ecosystem, everybody mostly talks about, let's say, heat or hotness, like how much something's being talked about, and sales are the number one thing that drives business. But I think it's less about those now and more about concurrent players, especially now that we're shifting over to live service games. And so if you have and are able to keep concurrent players, it is not necessarily more important than sales, but it can supplant sales or notoriety. A thing that comes up often in my Discord is somebody brings up a MMO, Like the fact that Guild Wars 3 is coming out soon. Or at least it was announced. My apologies. And the response I get is, wow, I didn't even realize that Guild Wars 2 was doing that well because I never hear about it. Well, Guild Wars 2 actually has, I forgot the number already, but it's in like the 6 digits of concurrent players still. Like, it's still a highly successful game. Same things with Black Desert Online. Um, Elder Scrolls isn't doing that well. New World isn't doing that well, but they're doing well enough to be successful, even though they're not necessarily popular. The same thing happens with a whole bunch of other games. You might look at something that was critically bombed and be like, dear God, how is this game still alive? It's concurrent players. Because the vocal majority doesn't actually like drive games necessarily. Like, they can have a huge impact on games, but they're not really what's being looked at as far as if a publisher is going to continue supporting a game developer or not. And that sort of leads us back to our question. Why is a puzzle game where, like, technically players can play with me, but they're really not, right? It's the obfuscation or illusion of a multiplayer game. Why does this have to exist? Why do these dailies have to exist? It's about concurrent players. And you might be thinking, well, how does, having other people in my lobby actually give concurrent players? It's about that community approach, and I think that perhaps maybe because the servers cannot handle it, or because, I don't know, there's really not that many players, it's getting harder to log in, so I think the game is getting more popular, but I think that it's about trying to build that community. This has also happened recently. Oh, I need these. In a game called Inkbound, which you may or may not have heard of on the channel, by the way. It also is releasing a day early, April 9th. Be sure to buy it, and I better see your ass there. And I absolutely freaking hate these things, my dude. Anyways, where was I? Oh, community. Inkbound has a player hub that is basically painfully similar to an MMO town, where you see other people's... Thank you. Is that the last one? That would actually be pretty dope. Damn. Alright. Anyways, you can see other players. They load you into a server chunk, and you see them running around in the hub before you start a run of a roguelike that has a maximum of 4 people. So obviously you can go around there and you can look for group. They also have a looking for group option, so that you don't have to do that. But you're seeing everybody's microtransactions, you're getting to know people, you start to recognize people, like, and, I'm running around, I see another beta tester, and I'm like, hey, like, giving them the finger guns emotes, they wave back, and then we could both go on our way. And as you play public games, which is their hope, you start to recognize the same people, and then you start seeing them in the lobby, and you're like, oh shit, there's Girthquake. How's it been, buddy? How are the kids? And Girthquake is like, dude, I ain't gonna talk about that in frickin' public. What the hell, man? Like, that creates a sense of community and connection that you don't really get with most games nowadays, but is still, like, very prevalent in MMOs. But, yeah, so just trying to cause that connection, because that causes more of, like, a sentimental, like, attachment to the game, and by creating community, you're more likely to log on, and you might bump into Girthquake and play a couple of games with him, right? And so that's basically what they're looking for in Inkbound, is to sort of like tie players into playing every day. That game also has daily quests and such things, and they're doing seasonal like content. They're trying to get concurrent players because you need concurrent players in order to survive in today's market. Anyways, same thing about Islands of Insight basically is my guess. The other thing about rotating through puzzles daily, although it definitely annoys me with the way that I'm playing the game, which is I've been primarily focused on 100%ing this continent, is if all of these things were actually active at the same time, the game would literally be unplayable. So, to that regard, I kind of respect it, but at the same time, I think the overall goal is, you know, convincing people to come back every day to try and get that last morphic fractal. Um, anyways, they got a lot of flack because it was originally tagged as a cooperative game where, yes, I could theoretically help you with a puzzle, but not really. And so, why is it called a cooperative game? Well, they went ahead and they removed that tag since. And technically speaking, if you had a bunch of friends who loved playing puzzles, you could help them with some puzzles by being there in proximity and like standing over, like say, hidden statues or something like that. But for the most part, you're an island in this game, and the only interaction that I've really had with other players is seeing them run around a area, and then due to the way that they're moving, I'm like, oh, they're looking for this type of puzzle that I'm looking for probably. They will probably find the last piece that I need, and so I follow them around a little bit, and then I give them a little bow, but they don't bow back because, like, who cares, dude? Um, anyways, going back to games industry today, um, realizing this and seeing other people like talk about like, how to say this, um, the director of Starfield recently said that gamers today are disconnected with how games are made. And I believe, again, that that is true. I don't think that, again, I have any sort of like insight or epiphany or anything like that into how games are made. Again, I've just been in like osmosis with these game developers and have, again, learned that it's not that dissimilar from my job. And I think that that's probably like the key part there is realizing that we're not that different, even though obviously they get to do air quotes the fun job, right? But son of a bitch, I see people post things, and the one that gets me the most, like seriously gives me an immediate physical reaction, is QA team does not exist, or do the devs even play their game? And the reason why that annoys me, one, because, well, I'm technically QA. If I'm being a play tester, beta tester, alpha tester, whatever you want to call it, right? Like, I am QA. And I have been in the situation where I have flagged those bugs. Or I have noted this thing, and it does not get changed. And so you might be like, well, that's the devs' fault, right? Why did the devs not fix this thing that everybody knew about? That's not how game development works. In, I would say manufacturing, right? Not necessarily multi-layered printed circuit boards. There is a concept of triage, right? This is technically in probably about any business. And basically what it is at the end of the day, everything costs time and blood. And by blood, I mean like somebody has to physically know and do the thing. And because everything costs time and blood, you can't do everything because you only have a certain amount of time and blood. Either due to deadlines or just due to, like your staffing shortages, stuff like that. And so you have to choose what's important. And very often, that's what it comes down to, is what is most important and what needs to get fixed. Happens all the time in my job. We know that somebody has to do this one thing. That's definitely closer. And it's not been done yet. And so management always asks, why has this not been done? And it's always like, well, that was your decision because you said that X, Y, and Z needed to be done first when we asked you. And it never like becomes the thing that anybody does because it's never like critical or the important thing. Same thing always happens in game development, right? Like you have to make sure that the product works. And you have to make sure that whatever is the most intrusive to the experience is fixed. I'm sure that I annoyed the absolute hell out of the Back for Blood devs by being like, hey, is healing efficiency scaled by scaling trauma like finally fixed? Is it finally fixed? Like, is it finally fixed? And they're like, Bitz, it's fucking fixed. And I'm like, it is not fixed. And like, yes, I understand that that's obviously like very like annoying to me. But the fact of the matter is that in the overall scheme of things, it's not that important. There's other more important things. And the people who engineer, say, healing efficiency in that regard, are not necessarily. Hold on. Sorry about that. I was getting scratchy again. Are not necessarily the people who are making the changes that are going out into the next patch. And this is where you get these weird things where, like, that really wasn't an issue and you chose to patch that instead of, like, the thing that was obviously the issue. Like, two different guys, right? There's often a conception that everybody on the dev team is able to make fixes, whereas most people on a dev team have to be working on the next thing because they have to satiate your appetite. And it does get annoying. I'm not saying that it isn't, but like I get it. And it's unfortunate. I really don't want to talk about what this shape that they're trying to make me make looks like. I'm really getting a Rorschach today, aren't I? I am not making the correct shape, though. That's for sure. Anyways. And I think I got sidetracked there a bit. My apologies. As somebody who has done tons of, again, beta testing, alpha testing, that sort of stuff, I have seen like exactly how much change happens between first implementation and launch. And that's not something that everybody sees, right? Like I have seen alphas that have been like pretty nasty, unstable, crash all the time, and I'm like, bro, there's no way that they're going to be able to fix this within a week. And they fix it within a week. But then everybody looks at what's currently in the game, and there's some annoying bugs, like some things aren't tagged with UI correctly. Maybe this one thing doesn't work, and then you get the phrase, QA does not exist. How did this possibly get past QA? And all of that stuff. No, I tagged that personally. It wasn't as important as making the game that you are playing, the game that you are playing right now. Because it was suffer before, let me tell you. And I don't know if that's like other people's industry or just, again, that they don't have the same experience as I do. But, yeah. I don't know. At the end of the day, you got to triage and get the product out the door. We do it all the time in manufacturing. Another thing that I hear a lot that honestly upsets me, and some people, thank God, Some people in my Discord might recognize this one, and they might think that I'm outing them. I'm not. It's how I come up with these ideas to talk about, really. Um, People being like, I can't believe that developer abandoned us. But I've, again, been in close proximity enough to know that that's not something that's done, right? Let's take some real world examples, right? Skullgirls by Lab Zero Games. Lab Zero did a bang up job on Skullgirls. It is my favorite fighting game of all time, even more than Marvel 2, which is a statement. But what happened with Skullgirls is Autumn Games, the publisher, eventually just looked at them and was like, yeah, you don't make this game anymore. And they pulled the rug out from under them. And then the game just sort of like sat for a while. Skullgirls Mobile got released and was balanced to a point, and then they were like, okay, whoever's making Skullgirls Mobile, you make Skullgirls now. Now Skullgirls is back up and it's getting new content, which is great for the Skullgirls community, except that it is an entirely different game. Well, functionally not, but the minutia is. And it's not being made by Lab Zero Games. And due to some, like problematic stuff, that might be a good idea, but, I still think that it's a little weird that that dynamic can and does exist. Another example, Steambird's Alliance by, goddamn, I forgot the name of the team. They were trying to make a game similar to Realm of the Mad God, which is a game that they had made. And everybody who was looking at Steambird's Alliance was like, why should we trust you when you abandoned us? And the dev team was like, bro, they literally pulled out the rug from beneath us. They said, you're not making this game anymore. And so now they want to make a game similar to it. And, well, that game's dead, so you don't even have to look up that one. But it's a similar situation of game developers are like, yeah, you're not making it, or not game developers, sorry. The publishers, the owners of the IP are like, yeah, you're not making this anymore, and we don't want to see you again. And then they get divorced, and, now someone else is taking care of your kid. And it's, I don't know, it's probably a little heartbreaking, to be honest. But that's besides the point. So we have a similar thing in manufacturing, where obviously, like, unless you are a first-party manufacturer, so in other words, you work, let's say, immediately under Raytheon or Google, right? And you're making Google server circuit boards for Google servers, and you are owned directly by Google. Then at that point, yes, you are probably going to make Google stuff. But a lot of manufacturing work gets outsourced to the lowest bidder, which means that somebody else is actually making this stuff, and maybe they do final assembly. A good example is Apple. Apple doesn't want the manufacturer to know that they're making the next Apple phone, because obviously that's a leak concern. So instead they always boot up under aliases. And so then you don't know that you're making, something that's similar to a cell phone, but you don't know what it is. And then probably when it gets to, probably when it gets to the final assembler, which is probably like more directly owned by Apple, because that's more cost efficient and better for their leak proof, then it gets actually start more resembling an iPhone once it's populated with components and stuff like that. So similarly, if you don't know how the games industry works, we have these things called publishers. And publishers very often own the intellectual property of the game that developers are making. And I think a good example of this actually is Call of Duty, right? They've got like the 3 teams that generally like switch off games, and that's how they're able to release them every year, is every third game is made by
a team. I don't know if that's how Modern Warfare is working now that it's a live service, but that was my understanding of it like 2 years ago when I actually cared about it. And so at any time, and this has also happened, let's talk about another recent current example. The new Vampire the Masquerade game, Vampire the Masquerade 2 Bloodlines, I believe it's called, has been through so many different hands because of either due to money concerns or stuff like that. The publisher keeps pulling it from one dev team, handing off to the next dev team, and they're like, finish this game. I think it's changed hands like 3 times, 4 times. Anyways, same thing happens in manufacturing. If the customer decides that they don't like you anymore, they're going to be like, well, guess what? I wish we could become better strangers, and we don't ever want to hear you again. And and this happens quite a lot in game development too. Is like all of a sudden, like you don't make this game anymore. Uh, Going back to the manufacturing example, like to put it in perspective, if you're an automotive factory, you are not necessarily a Toyota factory. You are a factory that makes Toyotas. And at any time, you can become a factory that makes Chevys. And that's the reality of it. And so you run into situations like, why did this game ship so early? It's obviously not ready. Uh, the developers don't want to ship. Well, okay, that's not true. We have a example recently. I believe it's called The Last Day or something like that. I don't know. All I know is that it was the biggest scam probably in the recent time. But and like why games like rarely get delayed is because at the end of the day, the publisher needs money, and if that outgrows the need of releasing a good product, they're going to do that because for whatever reason, people don't look at publishers; they look at developers. And so they get away scot free, and you release, like, I don't know, a game called Redfall, and nobody thinks badly of you for it because, well, that's the team's fault. They made that game, right? And it's just sort of like a toxic relationship that the average consumer does not understand this and will always fault the devs. Like, why aren't the devs releasing a slap patch to fix everything that's wrong with the game if it's not going to be ran anymore? Who do you think pays for that patch? The publisher does. And if the publisher says, guess what, you don't make this game anymore and I don't want to talk to you ever again, like, a patch isn't happening. And that's why it often comes down to, like, say, community patches or, like, in a Bethesda game, right? Like, they're not concerned. This is actually probably a developer problem, right? But they're not concerned with patching something that's, like, however many days old. They need to make the next game. It's also why you get reduced down to, like, say, Titanfall 2 currently has 2 devs behind it. Same concept. Like, at one end of the day, you need to triage for the product, and at another end of the day, your boss is telling you that you're going to do this. We get that a lot again in manufacturing, where we want to do the right thing, but the wrong thing is significantly easier or costs less money. So we are going to do the wrong thing to fix a problem, and you're told, make it work. Like, how are we going to get out this many cores with this many people all of a sudden? Make it work. Our capacity doesn't do that. Make it work. And that sort of thing also pretty much happens with publishers as well. You also have, a while back, I was able to talk to the lead gameplay director, the gentleman squirrel, for Back for Blood, a game that, as if you follow the channel, you know that I love. But and I was like, okay, this guy's a doc main or a medic main too, so I'm gonna just like try and have some conversation with the guy. And I asked him, like, what do you feel about the current balance of, like, the medical meta, let's say, like the how medical or like the health meta is. And he told me, or they told me, I guess I should be saying, but it's known that they're male, I guess, or at least show symptoms, or not symptoms of, they are male adjacent, at least. I don't know political correctness. Please don't cancel me. Um, and they were like, it doesn't matter what I think about the current state of the medical cards. And at the time, I thought that that was very weird. But now, being older and a little wiser, at least a little bit, right? I hope, I understand what they mean, because you get the instance where, at the end of the day, once a game is released, it becomes its own beast. And balance sometimes has to happen with the players, right? The players are going to figure out how they want the game. And since concurrent players are important, you sometimes don't get to do what you feel is right. And sometimes you do, and players don't like it, right? Like in the instance of Back for Blood, every single patch, Melee got nerfed, and every single time that Melee got nerfed, everybody said that it was the end of Melee. This is the worst patch ever. I can't believe that you've done this, right? They haven't even played the patch yet. And then, guess what? 3 weeks later, everybody's still playing Melee because it's still the best thing in the game, even though it took like a 30% hit. Like, and it just goes to show you, like, how crazy that playstyle was. Another example. Sorry, I'm trying to actually, like, I hate these things so much. Another example is Darkest Dungeon. Players found out the best way to play the game is they took all the heart out of it and they started playing it like a management game. You go maximum darkness, stress out your team, and then you sell them, get a new team, right? That's how you make the most money in that game. And you also get more rewards because of the fact that you're playing in darkness, and sometimes your team dies, and who cares, right? Like, because you were just going to sell them anyways. So then they added the, what is it? The heart attack mechanic. When somebody's stress gauge fully fills, they roll for death immediately. And a lot of people, like, it almost killed the game. They talk about it in postmortems all the time. Like, that decision literally almost killed Darkest Dungeon, which is regarded as like one of the best roguelikes, or it's technically a roguelike, right? Of all time, right? It's a highly influential game. But the devs doing something that they thought was entirely right almost killed the game before it could even launch out of early access. Another example, which probably nobody recognizes, is I am absolutely in love with a game called Tharsis, which is a dice resource management space survival game. It plays a lot like, say, Pandemic, where your ship is burning and crashing down around you, and you have to keep it and your crew alive long enough in order to make it to the end. And, in a twist, if you lose somebody, it's not all that bad, because you can harvest their meat and get resources or dice out of it. But when it launched, the game was referred to as, like, impossible. It's hard. Nobody could possibly even beat this game. It needs to be made easier. But again, that's honestly what happens a lot when a roguelike first comes out. It's either way too easy because it was made too generalized, or it's considered too hard because either its mechanics are a bit obfuscated, or like it's not as clear or cookie cutter as other games, so you don't understand the balance. And the developer, despite all of this, went ahead and made the game harder, because they knew that the game was actually like incredibly winnable, and still honestly is. It's the one reason why I don't play the game more. Thankfully, Spell Rogue is out now, and it kind of serves the same function for my brain. But bitch, you are so purple. Oh my god, Carson, you can't say that. Anyways, yeah, they went ahead and made the game harder, and I'm not gonna say it killed the game because it was kind of a niche game in general, but it certainly made a lot of people like review bomb the game, and it never really popped off. Despite the fact that, again, I think that it's one of the most interesting games of its time. But it's not always how it works. It seems like every game that I love dies, which is odd. Look out, Islands of Insight. Anyways, again, just going back to the fact that devs don't have as full a control of their game as you may think, and it doesn't. What else am I trying to say? Um, Decisions that might look weird to you are things that are the result of decisions being made by the people who actually have pull over the game. The dev team is just a bunch of people who want to make a cool product, right? They want you to enjoy the game. And I desperately think that they do. Or I think that that's 100% true. I've talked with developers all the time. I've been that overzealous like fanboy too. Like, how could you have done this? We trusted you. When they make a decision and then they realize later, like, yeah, okay, you're kind of right, and then it gets reverted. And I've had it where that doesn't get reverted because everybody loves it. Like, everybody thinks that it is the best thing that has ever been done to the game, and then I just sit there and I'm like, well, this is slowly becoming not the game that I love. But yeah, I hope that all of that made sense. I think we're about ready to wrap up the video. I probably missed a lot of things that I actually wanted to talk about, but yeah, if you guys have any feedback and you are for some reason still listening to me ramble about my thoughts and feelings right now, which is very odd for this game, or this channel, I would say, also for this game. But if I left you with any questions or you have anything that you want to add into the topic, go ahead and leave that down below in the comment section. Otherwise, I'll be honest with you, I'm probably going to release another 2 of these, at least one of these today, and yeah, I don't know. Catch you round, I guess.